Are you a leader, manager, entrepreneur, business owner, or knowledge worker? Are you leading people and wondering how to be a better leader in your own life and work? If you are, then you could be thinking about experimenting differently. Join us on the Experimental Leader podcast and take a look at the ways leaders are experimenting in their own lives. Hosted by Melanie Parrish and Mel Rutherford, we dive into real-life conversations about how people might be using a scientist mindset experimenting in their work. Shift your leadership into something more innovative. Join us on the Experimental Leader podcast today. Hi, Melanie.
Hi, Mel. It's great to be here with you today. I'm Melanie Parrish, and I'm a coach, a content creator, an author, and the host of the Experimental Leader podcast.
I'm Mel Rutherford. I'm a professor and McMaster University's first transgender department chair, and I'm also a host of the Experimental Leader podcast.
Well, I've been thinking about the roles that I play in my organization and the roles that lots of people play. And we don't just serve one role. It's rare that we get to do one thing. And it's interesting. I, as a content creator, a coach, a CEO, I have to wear a lot of hats. Sometimes I'm supervising people. Sometimes I'm doing client deliveries. Sometimes I'm creating content, and I'm really aware of, all those changing roles and how, as a leader, I have to manage all those roles really differently, and it can be really challenging. It can, and sometimes I get distracted. Sometimes I am, and sometimes I'm just more interested in one than another. Sometimes I get excited about one thing I'm doing, especially like course creation or podcasting or something, and I, don't necessarily want to do the supervision or the management roles that I have to do in running a company.
Yeah.
What are you thinking about?
Well, I've been thinking a little bit about mental health and supporting the mental health of people who report to me in my organization. And the reason I'm thinking about it now is because I'm taking a workshop that my employer offers on exactly this topic, how leaders support mental health. And, I'm not a clinician and I can't diagnose anyone, and it's not my job to decide who's in need of mental health supports. I think it's really clear that a leader should know what resources are available and connect someone who asks for mental health support. On the other hand, people are experiencing all kinds of things all the time, and as a leader, I'm not sure that it's my role to decide who would benefit from mental health support if they haven't come asking for it. And then I thought, if I was wondering if this pulls on our value of inclusivity, and what would it be for a leader to just be inclusive, be accepting of people in our community, acting a variety of ways, feeling a variety of ways, coming to work low energy one day, or being a little bit cranky one day, so I was wondering about that balance between actively offering support and just digging into inclusivity and being okay with everybody however they showed up to work today.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting to, like, where's the edge? Like, to be aware of where's the edge, like where is there an intervention that's needed, and when is it your job as a non-clinician? Like, how would you know? And I love the idea of expanding inclusivity. I think you're really good at speaking to that idea. Like, what if we don't Like, what if everybody just doesn't have to be perfect all the time at work? I think I find that idea really refreshing. And you talk about it regularly, and I really like it. So yeah, I really like that thought. And I'm also really grateful that I'm going to step into a different role today. After all that talk about roles, I'm going to step into the course creator role and be an interviewee today and let you interview me. So thank you for that too. So I will let you take it away.
That'll be fun. Let's do this. Welcome. I'm really excited to have my two guests with me today. I want to introduce Beverly Horton, workshop facilitator, ELA instructor, musician, and founder of Flipping the Script. Welcome, Beverly.
Thank you, Mel.
And I want to welcome Melanie Parrish, coach, consultant, and founder and executive director of the Experimental Leader Academy. Welcome, Melanie.
Thanks, Mel. It's fun to be a guest today.
Thank you. Thanks for making the time to be here. I want to start by congratulating the two of you on the new program you've just released called White People Work.
Thank you.
What can you tell me about this new program?
The first thing that I wanted to say is, and I think I mentioned this in one of the modules, videos for one of the modules, white people work used to be one of those phrases that I would utter in exasperation when white people would come asking for free of charge my input on their particular racial identity crisis of the day, looking for me to be the Black Google. And I would say, sometimes verbally and sometimes under my breath, white people work. Like that's your stuff to do. That's not mine unless you're going to pay me. This is your work to do. So it was very interesting when Melanie approached me about working on the project together, because I had this previous history when she said, I'm looking to put together this program, this curriculum. We weren't really sure what to call it at that point. But when she had indicated that she wanted to do this anti-racism program, and wanted to call it White People Work, that was I had a flashback to my use of the phrase. And I think pretty soon after she broached the subject, I shared that with her. So that's the title exists in that kind of tension for me.
Yeah, and for me, I always thought, with a queer identity, I think similarly, I always felt like people had straight people work to do. They would come to me in the same way. And so I realized that this carried over, that I had my own white people work to do around anti-racism work, that it wasn't, I had done some racial caucusing where we had done some white people work, and I had realized that there was work to be done that wasn't that it shouldn't be people of color who were doing all the anti-racism work in the world, that white people had their own work to do. And so I really wanted to partner with Beverly because I loved the work that she was doing in the world, and I wanted to have her help create this work and to bring her vast knowledge to this work. I was so excited when she said yes, because her perspective is so powerful. I'm just so excited that we've gotten to work together on this project.
Yeah, that's cool. So I know that there's a lot of anti-racism work available, a lot of anti-racism workshops available. What's important about creating this anti-racism work for white people?
Mm.
I think from my perspective, it's requiring or understanding that a lot of this work is first internal work, not about navel gazing, not about, white shame and blame and guilt and all of that kind of stuff, but trying to understand for white people to take the time. It's a time to pause and prepare, I think. Prepare for, to open up to the possibilities of reframing, noticing things differently, understanding what it means to be white in a racist society. It's it's brave work, right? It requires a lot of. It can be, in fact, I think when it's being done well, it's very unsettling.
Mm.
So one needs not a safe space, but a brave space, a container to hold that kind of hold all the vulnerability, offering a place to do that in a way that's that honors the self, but it's still self-reflective. It's in many instances, people do anti-racism work in like a seminar context where there's an expert, right, who's going to, this is what the landscape looks like, this is how you understand it, and this is what you do. My perception of white people work is it's even a step farther back than that. It's like the preparation for absorbing all of that information about what racism looks like, how it manifests itself in the world, and what we're called to do. It's like it's the an internal conversation that prepares one for an external conversation. And I'm really invested in that conversation model. I'm not here in the work as the expert, except in my lived experience as a person of color. And it's a conversation that I'm having with Melanie, where we're talking about many of the concepts that would come up in the context of a seminar, an anti-racism seminar. But we're having a conversation as two people, differently located and sometimes very similarly located people, just, and the verb that we've been using is grappling, right? This is hard stuff. What do we think about this? What do you think? What do I think? Why do we think the way that we do? Those kinds of, coming from a place of curiosity, and putting that in the context of conversation.
Yeah.
And I often find that I'm a little gobsmacked by my own hubris or my own context, my own experience of white supremacy as we have these conversations. As we've had these conversations, I've had the experience of incredible vulnerability, sort of balancing that without asking Beverly to take care of me in that process. It's been quite a journey. And I'm really excited about welcoming other people to that journey, to invite them to come, to have their own self-reflection, to have their own questioning, to look at their own lives, to look at their own experiences of race in their lives. It's been a really deep journey. And I think what's so different about this is that it isn't, we're not telling people the answers, we're asking the questions.
Yeah.
And that's how this is different than other programs that are out there, in a really deep way. I'm a coach, and Beverly is naturally curious and has this context, and we actually decided that questions were better than answers in this context. And I think that's a really powerful stand that we're taking. And it's been incredibly humbling for me to be a part of this journey with Beverly, just by creating the content. I've been going through the program. And I don't think I knew what it would be like when I started. And it's been life-changing for me to have this opportunity. It's been amazing and powerful.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, I really like this idea of creating questions and leaving and grappling and leaving space for struggle rather than handing out answers. Let me ask you maybe a challenging question. Is there any danger, or is there anything that we need to be cautious about in creating space that's defined as white people space for white people conversations? Is there anything to be careful about there?
I think that's a really interesting question. I actually attended a workshop this summer where people were doing caucusing, and they were doing long-term caucusing, and they were creating white people space to caucus over time. And I actually found that problematic. I didn't like it because I thought that caucusing should have, and caucusing, I'll just say, and Beverly, you might feel free to jump in and tell me I've got this not quite right. But caucusing, as I understand it, is that you go into affinity groups. So you would have a BIPOC group where you could have conversations, and BIPOC would be Black and or Indigenous people of color. And you could go into that group and talk about race from that perspective. And you could have a white caucus that was white people talking about race, mostly so that the BIPOC people weren't having to educate white people, and you weren't you were able to grapple with issues of race separately rather than together. But I do think that in best practices around caucusing, you do come back together to share learning at the end, and you're not having separatist groups forever. So the group that I heard about this summer, they were just staying separate, and I think that was problematic in my mind. I think they were getting value out of it because they were trying to talk about race, but I don't know, Beverly, what do you have thoughts on all of that?
So many thoughts. I think on a very simple level, in a racist society where white knowledge, white experience is privileged, and in some cases, or to a large extent, treated as normative or universal, everyday life, from my perspective, for white people is white caucusing. Because white people can very easily, in many parts of the world, live in a white caucus. You don't have to. You can make choices that ensure that you don't have to engage with anybody but other white people. That is not a, to use the language of privilege, that is not a privilege that virtually any people of color on the planet, even if they don't in their daily life walk in a space where they see white people, thanks to colonialism and imperialism, they're encountering whiteness all the time, right? in the developed world, and even in the not so developed world. I was thinking the other day about I don't know if either of you had seen the movie The Gods Must Be Crazy.
Mhm.
When was that, like in the 70s?
Yeah, I think so.
Sometime in the
Yeah.
70s. And for folks who are not familiar with it, it's a pygmy man in South Africa walking out in the middle of nowhere where you think there is no touching of Western civilization possible. And this Coke bottle, like perfect symbol of, capitalism, Western capitalism, comes and knocks him on the head, and he's trying for all he can do for the whole movie to try to send it back, and it can't go. It doesn't go in the opposite direction. So that's kind of the way that I think about. That was the image, the pop culture reference that came to my head as I was trying to think of how one might talk about the impossibility of people of color insulating themselves from whiteness, and the the fact that that's not reciprocal. White people can do that. It's possible. It's possible.
Yeah.
Because of systems of privileging. So.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, let me ask both of you, how's it been going? How has it been for you creating this curriculum and this program?
One thing that I found very interesting is that, because Melanie and I started working on this, I think early planning stages would have been like last spring, the spring of, or early summer of 2023. And in having one-to-one conversations with people, or even casual conversations over dinner or whatever, people were very interested. Like, oh yeah, this seems like work that would be transformative for me, not me speaking, other people speaking about their response to the work. And because I was getting so much out of creating the content with Melanie through our conversation, I had really great expectations for what would happen once we'd launched. And the initial response hadn't been what I anticipated. So I'm in a place right now where I'm trying to figure out what that's about, and how we make what we're offering, how we present our offering, elicit the same kind of enthusiastic response and curiosity that was coming out of the informal conversations that I was having with folks about the project. So, and it's interesting now going back and looking at some of the videos that we've shot, and our attempts to come up with homework, and it's like taking the program as we're going, which is an interesting kind of experience. It's offering opportunities for kinds of reflection that I didn't anticipate. So I think it'll all be to the good of the end project, but it speaks to the way that this work doesn't really have an end point, that it's always the continuing, if we're open to it, continuing opportunities for revelation, for change, for rethinking, reframing, renoticing things, grappling with things again. So
nice. I like that, renoticing. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, and I think when I started, I knew that I was worried about sort of cancel culture, like me doing anti-racism work. And yet I was so committed to it. I felt so strongly that this work was so important. It was so important for me as a white person to do white people work, like it to bring that to the world, that so many people are so afraid of getting it wrong that do the work, that, you know, it's almost like a circle. That circle keeps going, and so I really was conscious of not wanting to be afraid, because that fear is what keeps people from doing the work. And yet I think that we got some feedback in our launch that I didn't seem vulnerable enough, or that I seemed, in one of the marketing pieces that we did, as I was trying to describe my path for getting here, self-congratulatory.
Right.
And I was really devastated by that, because it wasn't where I'm coming from. It wasn't true for me. And I've noticed that it's really hard for me to draw all the lines about my own vulnerability. It's really hard for me to say, you know, in one piece that I wrote, it took me 5 years to actually even tell the story, because I felt so vulnerable by the story. And so, because I was so, you know, shocked by my own inability to see the impact of race in the story. And so it's been really interesting for me. I knew it was going to be an issue in the beginning, and then I still reel from that being an issue. I still know, like, it's still, I think it will always be an issue. I will always have to be brave. I'll always have to manage my own vulnerability in multiple ways in this project, both in the self-examination and in the external, putting myself out there in the project. And then the other thing that's really interesting that I still am grappling, it's that word again, and is in the juxtaposition between being certain as a course creator or a program creator, and vulnerable as a experiencer of the conversation. And so, like, from my perspective, every time I put together a program, it's like I'm the deliverer of the content, and yet we're not really delivering content. So in this, I'm actually experiencing the questions, and so I'm vulnerable, but I sometimes feel like I sound more certain than I am when we're delivering the questions. And so we're having those conversations too. And so that's a really interesting place, just as a creator of this program, about certainty and uncertainty, and how the balance of that is in this program.
Yeah, what Melanie was just saying, it took me the two comments about the self-congratulatory, or the perceived self-congratulatory tone, and the questions about vulnerability came out of responses that I got through my attempts to, you know, launch or spread the word, start the marketing aspect of the course through my personal email correspondence and through Facebook. And when those responses came to me, I didn't know what to do with them. It took me quite some time to pick up the phone and call Melanie and say, hey, so this is what we're getting now. What do we do? So it's caused me to question, so what is my part in this as well? And I think, again, that is that's the benefit of engaging in this, is that constant calling to self-reflection, sort of where am I in this? What does this mean? And having action come out of those that process of questioning.
Yeah, so the participants are going to grapple with stuff, and you're already grappling with stuff.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's what ultimately, from my perspective, that's what we're trying to model.
Yeah. So I know the program is up, and I know it's available. I know people are signing up for it already. Can you tell me what are participants going to be getting out of this program?
They get a series of modules, and they are able to do those modules. They're evergreen modules that they can go through. They get homework, they get a reading list. They're able to do a self-exploration with those modules. And a lot of it is getting to be a part of the dialogue with Beverly and me, and to get to explore the questions that we've been asking each other, and to ask themselves and to dive a little deeper into their own thinking in these videos. There's also an opportunity for some coaching if they want to participate and add on some coaching where they can actually talk directly to us and to sign up for that coaching.
Great. Well, I want to thank you again for being here with me today. I want to thank you for being open and being real and being vulnerable. Can you tell me where people could find your White People Work program?
Yeah, you can find it at program.whitepeoplework.com.
Thank you. Thank you, Beverly Horton and Melanie Parrish, and good luck with your White People Work project.
Thanks, Mel.
Thank you so much, Mel. Really appreciate it. It was fun to get to be a guest today. I hope that you're enjoying my show. And if you'd like to take a look at my book, The Experimental Leader, Be a New Kind of Boss to Cultivate an Organization of Innovators, I have a special deal for my podcast listeners. Go to book.experimentalleader.com and you can get a digital copy of my book for just $4.95. I hope you love it as much as I loved writing it. And I hope it helps you create your first experiments.
Well, that was fun and exciting having Beverly and Melanie talk about the White People Work program they just launched. I've signed up for the White People Work and I've started the journey. I encourage anybody who is curious about this to grapple with these issues in the White People Work program. Go experiment. Thank you for joining us on another episode of The Experimental Leader. We hope you have found value in today's episode because we're dedicated to helping you become the experimental leader you want to be. To access the show notes or learn more, visit melanieparish.com. Go experiment.